It's another Friday, the end of another week. I know it's been a while since I've checked in with you. Sorry. I hope you've been checking in with yourself. Just taking a few minutes at the end of your week to think about the week. Focus on the good things that happened. Try not to focus on any bad things that happened. Or, if they did, try to figure out what you could have done differently or what you wish had happened, or just try to reframe it in some way so that it doesn't end up being something you blame yourself for. So for now, take a nice deep breath. Just breathe in, close your eyes if you're not driving, until you feel just ready to let it all out. Breathe in again. Let it out whenever you feel like it. Square your shoulders a bit in case they're hunched up around your ears. Unclench your jaw in case that's clenched. Feel where you are. Just feel your body sitting on the chair, lying on the bed, or wherever you are. Just be aware of the present moment. Give yourself a little mental break. This episode is a little longer than usual because I want to tell you about an incredible story. In July 1983, Air Canada Flight 143 took off from Montreal en route to Edmonton. About halfway through the flight, the plane ran out of fuel. It's hard to imagine this scenario. Suddenly, flying at 41,000 feet on a routine domestic flight, everything on the airplane went dead. First, one engine stopped, and so they opted for an emergency landing at Winnipeg, something the crew had been trained to do, as most jets can fly on only one engine. But then the other engine stopped, something no one had ever trained for. They had a few battery-powered instruments and some hydraulics, and nothing else. Well, that's not quite right. They had two things working in their favor. The Boeing 767 was able to glide, and the pilot was an experienced glider pilot. So instead of crashing, the crew of Flight 143 glided the jet over 10 miles, losing 5,000 feet of altitude to land safely on a racetrack that used to be a Canadian Air Force base in Gimli, Manitoba, 17 minutes after running out of fuel. All passengers and crew survived, with only a few minor injuries. The incident became known as the Gimli Glider. The captain and crew were hailed as heroes for their incredible aviation skills, and for saving the lives of everyone on board. Their quick thinking and cool heads kept everyone safe, and averted an air disaster that could have seen many casualties on the ground as well, considering that a car show was taking place at the Gimli Motorsports Park, with hundreds of cars and campers around. The lack of engine noise meant that the plane was virtually silent as it glided in. Two boys were cycling within 1,000 feet of the projected point of impact, and the captain later said that the plane got so close to the boys that he could see the looks of sheer terror on their faces. It turns out that the confusion between metric and imperial measurements had led the crew to believe they had enough fuel to fly to Edmonton from a stop in Ottawa. They had loaded 22,400 pounds of fuel when 22,400 kilograms was needed. 45% of their total fuel requirements, in other words. Other factors led to the confusion, including some faulty fuel sensors and the need to measure fuel capacity manually with a dipstick, if you can believe it. But ultimately, it was the fact that most of the fleet used imperial measurements, and the 767 used metric that was the source of the confusion. And this is why the hero captain of Flight 143, who later received the first ever Fédération Aéronautique Internationale diploma for outstanding airmanship, was demoted by Air Canada for 6 months, and the first officer was suspended for 2 weeks for allowing this incident to happen. It might seem contradictory. To demote and suspend two heroes who prevented a certain disaster, but along with mistakes made by other crew, the ultimate responsibility for the entire flight belonged to the captain and first officer. They were in charge of absolutely everything that happened on board their airplane, and so had to be held accountable for the fueling mistake. I love this story because it's a great example of how it's possible to be exceptionally good in one way, even heroic, and yet be human and make mistakes and be held accountable all at the same time. Quite often, people tend to see themselves as either wholly one or wholly another. Grandiose social media moguls brag about themselves as if they are utterly perfect, and everyday people berate themselves for their mistakes and failings and never give themselves a break. The truth is, all of us are a mixture of both. Sometimes we're covered in glory, sometimes we make enormous mistakes. We are never all good or all bad. If you tend to see yourself this way, if your self-talk tells you that you're worthless or will never achieve anything, I hope you realize how impossible that is. You can never be all good, and you can never be all bad. You can pull off a miracle landing and face sanctions for it at the same time, because both things are true at the same time. Remember this duality of our nature the next time you find yourself resorting to black and white thinking. So that's it for now. Be good to yourself. You're worth it.